The moment my daughter Bethany looked me straight in the eye and said, "Mom, you need to understand. You're becoming a burden we can no longer afford to carry," I felt something inside me shatter. Not my spirit, mind you, but whatever illusions I'd been clinging to about my children's love. We were sitting in my own living room, the room where I'd rocked her to sleep as a baby, where I'd taught her to read, where I'd comforted her through her first heartbreak. My son Derek sat beside her on the couch, his face a careful mask of concern that didn't quite reach his eyes. "A burden?" I repeated, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. I was 72 years old, but I'd never felt ancient until that moment. "You're not well, Mom," Derek said, leaning forward with that practiced empathy he must have learned in his corporate job. "We've been documenting everything. The confusion, the memory lapses, the physical decline. We think it's time we discussed arrangements." I looked down at my shaking hands. They had been getting worse, hadn't they? And the nausea, the headaches, the way I'd been feeling so weak lately. I'd been to 3 doctors in the past 2 months, but none could find anything definitively wrong. "What kind of arrangements?" I asked. Bethany exchanged a glance with her brother. "We've been talking to some very good facilities, places where you'd get round-the-clock care, professional help. You want to put me in a home?" "We want you to get the care you need," Bethany corrected, her tone saccharine. "And honestly, Mom, this house is far too much for you to manage. The maintenance alone. This house is worth $850,000, I said quietly, according to the assessment you insisted I get last month. The brief flash of something cold in Bethany's eyes told me everything I needed to know. "We're just thinking of your welfare," Derek said. "And, well, our families are struggling right now. Bethany's going through her divorce, and Amanda and I have college tuition coming up for the twins. If we could access your equity, we could help you and get ourselves on stable footing. So you want my house?" "We want what's best for everyone," Bethany said. "You'd sign a power of attorney over to us. We'd handle everything. You wouldn't have to worry about a thing." I looked at my 2 children, both in their early 40s, both looking at me with practiced expressions of concern, while basically planning how to divide my assets before I was even gone. "And if I say no?" Derek's jaw tightened. "Mom, you're not thinking clearly. That's part of the problem. We may need to pursue legal guardianship if you can't make rational decisions anymore." That's when Bethany pulled out a folder, thick with papers. "We've been keeping records, Mom. Doctor's visits, incidents of confusion, times you've forgotten to pay bills." "I haven't forgotten to pay anything," I interrupted. "Physical decline, dangerous behavior. We have everything documented. We're not trying to hurt you. We're trying to help." But what they didn't know was that I had already been planning. They didn't know that this 72-year-old woman had one more card to play. They didn't know what the plumber had found in the basement 3 days ago, and they definitely didn't know that I'd been recording every single conversation we'd had for the past 2 weeks. Because sometimes when you've lived as long as I have, you learn to recognize when something isn't right. And you learn to protect yourself, even when the threat comes from inside your own family. I've always been a morning person. Even at 72, I wake up at 6 a.m. like clockwork, make myself a cup of Earl Grey tea, and sit by my kitchen window watching the neighborhood come to life. It's a ritual I've had for 40 years, ever since my husband Thomas died and left me in this big house with its 4 bedrooms and memories tucked into every corner. That particular Tuesday in August started like any other. I had my tea, I read the newspaper, the actual paper one, not on some computer screen, and I was planning my day. Lunch with my friend Virginia at noon, grocery shopping after, and maybe some gardening in the afternoon if the heat wasn't too brutal. My daughter Bethany called at 7:30 a.m., which was unusual. She worked as a real estate agent and usually didn't surface before 9. "Mom, good morning," she said, her voice bright and cheerful. "I was thinking about you and wanted to check in. How are you feeling?" "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just having my tea." "Good, good. Listen, Derek and I were talking, and we want to come by for dinner on Friday. Would that work? We could pick up Thai food, your favorite. I smiled, warmed by the thought of having my children over. It had been weeks since I'd seen them both at once. That sounds lovely. Perfect. And Mom, don't worry about cleaning up or anything. We'll handle everything. You just relax, okay? After we hung up, I felt a little glow of happiness. Maybe they were finally making more time for their mother. Maybe their busy lives were settling down enough to remember the woman who'd raised them. I went for my morning walk in Riverside Park, like I do every day. That's where I met Virginia, my best friend of 30 years, doing her own morning constitutional. "Dorothy," she called out, waving from near the fountain. "You're looking well today." "Feeling well," I said, joining her on our usual bench. "Bethany and Derek are coming for dinner on Friday." Virginia's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. She'd been skeptical of my children for months now, ever since Bethany had asked me to co-sign a loan for her after the divorce. I'd done it, of course, she was my daughter, but Virginia had warned me about setting boundaries. "That's nice," Virginia said carefully. "How have you been feeling? You mentioned some headaches last week." "Oh, they come and go. The doctor says it's probably just stress and to stay hydrated." We walked together for another 20 minutes, talking about her grandchildren, the new restaurant opening downtown, the usual comfortable topics of long friendship. But I noticed Virginia watching me with concern, the way she had been doing lately. What I didn't tell her was that the headaches were getting worse, and the nausea, and this strange weakness in my limbs that made me feel like I was aging 10 years overnight. I'd been to my doctor, Dr. Harrison, twice in the past month. He'd run blood tests, checked my blood pressure, examined me thoroughly. Everything came back normal except for some vitamin deficiencies, which he said was common in elderly patients. He'd prescribed supplements, which I picked up from the pharmacy and dutifully took every morning with breakfast. That Friday, Bethany and Derek arrived at 6:30 p.m. with bags of Thai food and big smiles. My daughter looked tired, her blonde hair pulled back in a messy bun, dark circles under her eyes. The divorce was taking its toll on her, I knew. Derek looked better, his advertising firm was doing well, he'd told me, but there was a tension in his shoulders I didn't remember from before. "Mom, the house looks great," Derek said, kissing my cheek. "Have you been gardening? The roses out front are beautiful." "Every afternoon," I said proudly, though I must admit I've been getting tired more easily lately. "Well, you are 72, Bethany said, setting the food on the dining room table. "You should be taking it easier. Maybe hire a gardener? I like doing it myself. It keeps me active." We sat down to dinner, and it was pleasant. We talked about Derek's twins, Rebecca and Ryan, who were preparing for their senior year of high school. We talked about Bethany's ex-husband Richard and his new girlfriend, a topic that made Bethany's jaw clench. And we talked about my plans to volunteer at the library once the fall program started. "Actually, Mom, we wanted to talk to you about something," Derek said, setting down his fork. "Your finances." I felt a small flutter of unease. "What about them?" "Well, you're sitting on a significant asset in this house," he continued. "And with your pension and Social Security, you're comfortable, but have you thought about what happens as you get older, if you need care?" "I have my savings," I said, "and this house is paid off. I'm fine." "But long-term care is expensive," Bethany jumped in. "We're just worried about you being prepared. Maybe you should think about selling, downsizing to something more manageable. The money could be invested, create a cushion." "I'm not selling my house," I said firmly. "This is where I raised you, where your father and I built our life. I'm staying here." They exchanged a look that I pretended not to notice. Okay, Derek said, raising his hands. "We're not trying to push you. We just want to make sure you're taken care of." After they left that night, I stood in my empty house and felt the weight of silence. Something in that conversation had felt wrong, like there was a script they were following, words carefully chosen. But I pushed the feeling away. They were my children. They loved me. They were just concerned. The next morning, I woke up feeling worse than I had in years. The nausea was so intense I could barely make it to the bathroom. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't hold my teacup without spilling it. I called Dr. Harrison's office and went in that afternoon. More tests, more blood work, more reassurances that sometimes elderly patients just have bad days, that my body was changing, that these things happen. He adjusted my supplements, told me to rest more, drink plenty of water. I did everything he said, but I kept getting worse. It was Virginia who first said something that planted a seed of doubt. We were having lunch at our favorite cafe, the Garden Room, on a Wednesday in September. I'd barely touched my soup, feeling too nauseous to eat much. "Dorothy, you need to see a specialist," Virginia said, her voice tight with worry. "This has been going on for too long. 2 months of feeling this sick isn't normal. Dr. Harrison says—" "I don't care what Dr. Harrison says. I've known you for 30 years, and I've never seen you like this." She reached across the table and took my hand. "You're wasting away. Look at yourself. You've lost at least 15 pounds. I looked down at my clothes, hanging looser than they had even a month ago. She was right. "There's something else," Virginia said, hesitating. "I don't want to sound paranoid, but when did this start? The illness?" I thought about it. Late July, early August, around when Bethany started calling more often. Virginia's lips pressed into a thin line. "And when did Derek start coming by the house regularly?" "Around the same time. Why?" "Dorothy, I'm probably wrong. I'm probably being a suspicious old woman. But have you considered that maybe someone doesn't want you feeling well?" I laughed, but it came out hollow. "Virginia, that's crazy. My own children." "Is it? You're sitting on almost $1 million in equity. Bethany's drowning in divorce debt. Derek mentioned college tuition. They've been pushing you to sell the house, to sign financial papers. They're worried about me." "Are they? Or are they worried about their inheritance?" I left lunch feeling shaken. Virginia's words echoed in my mind all afternoon. It was ridiculous, impossible. My children would never... But that night, when Derek showed up unannounced with vitamins that might help more than what the doctor prescribed, I found myself hesitating before I took them. "These are from a specialist I know," he said. "They're really good for people your age. Better absorption, organic ingredients. They might make a real difference." He stood there in my kitchen, watching me with an expectant smile. And for the first time in my life, I looked at my son and felt afraid. "Thank you, sweetheart," I said, taking the bottle. "I'll start them tonight." He seemed satisfied and left after making me promise to call him if I needed anything. I stood in my kitchen holding that bottle of vitamins, thinking about Virginia's words, about how I'd been getting sicker right around the time my children started being so concerned, about how they'd been documenting everything, taking videos of me on their phones when they thought I wasn't looking, making notes about incidents I didn't remember. I took the vitamins Derek had brought and put them in a Ziploc bag, labeling them with the date and Derek's name. Then I put them in the back of my freezer. Instead, I went back to my regular supplements from the pharmacy. The next morning, I woke up feeling slightly better for the first time in weeks. The basement door had been sticking for months. I'd mentioned it to Derek several times, but he kept saying he'd get to it. He'd been busy. Finally, in late September, I called a plumber myself. Not for the door, that was a handyman job, but because there was a small leak in the pipes running through the basement ceiling. Just a steady drip that was starting to stain the concrete floor. The plumber, a young man named Sam Rodriguez, arrived on a Thursday afternoon. I showed him down to the basement, pointing out the leak, and left him to work while I went back upstairs to make myself some tea. An hour later, Sam came back upstairs with a strange expression on his face. "Mrs. Whitman," he said carefully, "I fixed the leak, but there's something down there I think you should see." My heart started pounding. "What is it?" "I'm not sure. But it's hidden behind some old storage boxes in the corner. I only noticed because I had to move them to get to the pipes." I followed him back downstairs, my knees protesting at each step. The basement was unfinished, mostly used for storage. Boxes of Christmas decorations, old furniture, items from when the kids were young that I couldn't bear to throw away. Sam led me to the far corner, where he'd moved several boxes. Behind them, tucked against the wall, was a plastic storage container I'd never seen before. "I didn't open it," Sam said. "It's your house, your things. But I figured you should know it's there." After he left, I stood in my basement staring at that container. It was new, the kind you buy at Target or Walmart, with a blue lid snapped tight. There was no dust on it, which meant it hadn't been there long. My hands were shaking from fear or illness, I wasn't sure, as I opened the lid. Inside were papers. Lots of papers. Medical records with my name on them, but doctor's appointments I'd never made. Notes describing symptoms I'd never had. Severe dementia, violent outbursts, dangerous behavior. There were emails printed out, correspondence with nursing homes, quotes for long-term care facilities. And there, at the bottom, was a journal. Derek's handwriting, which I'd recognize, anywhere. I'd helped him learn to write, after all, sitting with him at the kitchen table when he was 6 years old, guiding his hand to form each letter. The journal entries were dated, starting in late June. June 28th. Had coffee with Bethany. We're both drowning. Her divorce is going to cost her everything, and I'm looking at $200,000 in college tuition for the twins. Mom's house could solve all our problems, but she won't even consider selling. We need another approach. July 5th. Bethany found someone who can help. Says it's safe, undetectable, small doses over time. Will look like natural decline. Just a few months and we'll have everything. Mom's 72 anyway. How much longer did she really have? July 12th. Started today. Put it in her tea canister. She drinks Earl Grey every morning like clockwork. Should start showing symptoms within a few weeks. July 26th. She's definitely feeling it. Called her doctor twice this week. Blood work came back clean, just like we expected. The beauty is that it doesn't show up in standard tests. Genius, really. August 15th. Mom's getting worse. Good. Bethany's documenting everything. Videos, notes, medical visits. Building our case for incompetence. Another month or two, and we can move forward with guardianship. Then we control everything. September 3rd. She's declining faster than expected. Good. Bethany brought over the papers for power of attorney. Mom signed them yesterday, her hands shaking so bad she could barely hold the pen. She doesn't even realize what she signed. We're almost there. I read every entry, my hands shaking so badly the pages rattled. My own children, my own flesh and blood, plotting to kill me, poisoning me slowly, systematically, for money. I thought about every cup of tea I'd made in the past 3 months. Every morning, reaching for that canister. Never suspecting that my own children had turned it into a murder weapon. The room spun. I had to sit down on the concrete floor, journal still clutched in my hands. They'd been poisoning me, documenting my decline, planning to take everything I had. And they almost succeeded. I don't know how long I sat there in my basement, surrounded by the evidence of my children's betrayal. Could have been minutes. Could have been hours. But eventually, rage replaced shock. They thought I was too old, too weak, too trusting to fight back. They thought they could document my confusion and no one would believe a sick old woman if she accused them of anything. They were wrong. I took that container and everything in it and carried it upstairs. My hands were steady now, steadier than they'd been in weeks. I had a plan forming, and I needed help. I called Virginia first. "I need you to come over," I said. "Right now. And I need the name of that lawyer friend of yours, the one who specializes in elder abuse." "Dorothy, what's wrong?" "Everything," I said. "Everything is wrong, but I'm going to make it right." Virginia arrived 20 minutes later. I showed her the journal, the papers, everything. She read with her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "Oh, Dorothy, oh my God. I need help," I said. "I need to stop taking whatever they've been giving me. I need to get tested by a real specialist, not Dr. Harrison. And I need to gather more evidence." Virginia nodded, her expression hardening into determination. "My lawyer friend is named Patricia Chen. She's fierce, and she doesn't lose. I'll call her right now. And Virginia, I need to keep acting sick, keep letting them think their plan is working, because I need them to feel confident enough to show their hand completely. Virginia looked at me with new respect. You're going to take them down. I'm going to protect myself, I corrected. They made their choice. Now they have to live with the consequences. Over the next week, I worked carefully. I saw Patricia Chen, a sharp woman in her 50s who listened to my story with growing anger. She immediately sent me to a toxicologist, Dr. Linda Martinez, who ran specialized tests that Dr. Harrison had never thought to order. The results came back 3 days later: heavy metal poisoning, specifically arsenic and thallium, both slowly accumulating in my system. Long-term low-dose exposure designed to mimic natural illness. If you'd continued at this rate, Dr. Martinez said grimly, you would have been dead within 2 months, maybe 3. I filed a police report, but Detective Williams, who took my statement, warned me. This is going to be hard to prove, Mrs. Whitman. They'll say you're confused, that you put those papers there yourself. We need more evidence. Then I'll get more evidence, I said. I went home and did several things. First, I bought a security camera system online and had Virginia's grandson install them throughout my house, hidden in smoke detectors and picture frames. Every room was now being recorded. Second, I dumped out my tea canister and replaced it with clean tea from a sealed package I bought myself. I kept the contaminated tea in a sealed bag with documentation. Third, I started keeping a journal of my own, documenting every time my children visited, everything they said, everything they did. And fourth, I kept pretending to get worse. It was easier than I expected. I'd already lost weight from the actual poisoning. I let my hands shake when they were watching. I acted confused about simple things. I forgot conversations we'd had. Derek came by twice a week, always bringing vitamins or supplements that I accepted with trembling hands and grateful smiles. I documented every bottle, photographed them, sealed them in bags. Bethany visited 3 times a week, always with her phone out, always recording me. For your doctor, she'd say, so we can show him how you're doing. And all the while, my hidden cameras recorded everything. Every false word of concern. Every manufactured incident. Every time they looked at each other with satisfaction, thinking their plan was working. On October 15th, exactly 2 months after I found the journal, they came to my house together with a man in a suit. I was ready. Mom, this is David Thornton, Derek said. He's a lawyer. We've asked him to help us. Help you. I looked at them with my best confused, elderly expression. Help me with what? You haven't been well, Mom, Bethany said gently, sitting beside me on the couch. We're worried you can't take care of yourself anymore. We think it's time for you to get professional care. We've found a wonderful facility, Derek added. Full-time nursing, activities, everything you need, and you wouldn't have to worry about this big house anymore. But I like my house, I said, letting my voice waver. We know, Bethany soothed. But it's too much for you now. Mr. Thornton has some papers here. They'll give Derek and me the authority to handle everything for you. Your finances, your property, your medical care. You won't have to worry about anything. David Thornton opened his briefcase and pulled out documents. Power of attorney, financial guardianship, property transfer papers. If you'll just sign here, Mrs. Whitman, he said, pointing to signature lines. My hand was actually steady, but I made it shake as I reached for the pen. That's when Patricia Chen walked into my living room from the kitchen, where she'd been waiting. I wouldn't sign anything if I were you, Dorothy, she said calmly. Derek jumped up. What the hell? Who are you? Patricia Chen, Mrs. Whitman's attorney, and you all need to leave, now. This is my mother's house, Bethany said, her voice rising. You can't just... Actually, I can. I'm acting on behalf of my client, who has full mental capacity and has not consented to any of these proceedings. Patricia looked at David Thornton. I hope you did your due diligence, counselor, because what you're participating in here is elder financial abuse and attempted coercion. Thornton's face went pale. He started gathering his papers. I was told Mrs. Whitman was incapacitated. She's not, as you can see. Patricia turned to my children. You have 10 minutes to leave this property. Don't contact Mrs. Whitman again except through me. Mom, Derek said, turning to me with that practiced concern. What's going on? You're confused. We're just trying to help. That's when I stood up. My voice, when I spoke, was clear and strong. I found your journal, Derek. I found everything you hid in the basement. I know what you've been doing to me for the past 3 months, both of you. The color drained from Bethany's face. Derek went very still. I don't know what you're talking about, he said finally. The arsenic and thallium in my tea. The fake medical records. Your plan to poison me and steal my house. I pulled out my phone and showed them a photo of Derek's journal entry. It's all documented. The police have copies. Toxicology reports proving what you did. Video evidence from the past. Month of you bringing me contaminated supplements. Bethany started crying. Real tears this time, not the manufactured ones she'd been showing me for months. Mom, please. Get out of my house, I said. Both of you. You can't prove anything, Derek said, but his voice was shaky. You're a sick old woman. You probably planted that journal yourself in some confused state. Actually, Detective Williams said, walking in from the dining room where he'd also been waiting, we can prove quite a lot. We've been building a case for the past 2 weeks based on Mrs. Whitman's evidence. You're both under arrest for attempted murder, elder abuse, and fraud. What happened next was a blur. Handcuffs, Miranda rights, Bethany sobbing, Derek silent and pale. David Thornton fled the scene so fast he left his briefcase behind. After they were gone, I sat in my living room with Patricia, Virginia, and Detective Williams, feeling like I'd aged 100 years in one afternoon. Are you okay? Virginia asked, taking my hand. I don't know, I said honestly. I just had my own children arrested for trying to kill me. They made their choice, Patricia said firmly. You're protecting yourself and setting a precedent. This happens more than people realize, adult children preying on elderly parents. The trial was set for December. Patricia was confident we had an airtight case. The evidence was overwhelming. The journal, the contaminated tea and supplements, the toxicology reports, the videos showing them bringing me vitamins and documenting my decline, the fake medical records they'd created. But more than the evidence, I had something else. A clear voice and a sound mind to testify to what had been done to me. The prosecution offered them a plea deal, 15 years in prison each for attempted murder and elder abuse. Bethany took it immediately. She wrote me a letter apologizing, saying the divorce had made her desperate, that she never meant for things to go this far. I didn't respond. What was there to say? Derek refused the plea and went to trial. He claimed I was senile, that I'd fabricated everything, that the journal was a forgery. He said I'd poisoned myself to get attention, that I'd always been mentally unstable. The jury deliberated for 4 hours and found him guilty on all counts. He got 20 years. That was 6 months ago. I'm sitting in my living room now, the same room where my children tried to trick me into signing away everything I had. The same room where I'd raised them with love and sacrifice, never imagining they could become the people they became. I've gained back the weight I lost. My hands are steady. The headaches are gone. Dr. Martinez says there's no permanent damage from the poisoning, though it was close. I've changed my will. Everything goes to a foundation I've established for elder abuse prevention and education. Derek's twins, Rebecca and Ryan, reached out to me. They're devastated by what their father did. I've been having lunch with them once a month. They're good kids, not responsible for their father's sins. Bethany's ex-husband, Richard, called me to apologize for whatever role his divorce might have played in pushing her to such desperate measures. I told him he wasn't to blame. Adults make their own choices. Virginia still comes over for tea every morning. We sit at my kitchen table, and I use my new tea canister, and we talk about grandchildren and books and the garden, normal things, safe things. But sometimes I look at my daughter's empty chair at the dining room table, or I pass Derek's old bedroom, and I feel the loss so deeply it takes my breath away. Not the loss of who they are now, but the loss of who I thought they were, the children I raised, the people I believed them to be. That illusion is gone, and some days the grief of that is overwhelming. Patricia Chen has asked me to speak at conferences about elder abuse, to tell my story, to help other elderly people recognize the warning signs before it's too late. I've agreed. If my pain can protect someone else, then something good can come from this nightmare. The house feels emptier now, not because I'm alone, I was alone before, but because I know my children won't walk through that door again. No more Sunday dinners, no more holiday celebrations, no more pretending we're a family. But I'm alive, I'm healthy, I'm free, and I have something my children will never have: my integrity intact. Would you have forgiven them? Could you have forgiven someone who looked you in the eye, smiled, and handed you poison while calling it love? Or would you have stood your ground like I did, knowing it meant losing them forever? Sometimes I wonder if younger people understand what it's like to be seen as disposable in your own family, to be reduced to a dollar amount, an inconvenient obligation, a hurdle between someone and their inheritance. We raised our children to be independent, to be strong, to take care of themselves. But somewhere along the way, did we forget to teach them that their parents are still human beings, still deserving of respect, dignity, and basic compassion? I'm 73 now. I have good years left, God willing, years I almost didn't get to see. And I'll spend them on my terms, in my house, surrounded by people who value me for who I am, not what I'm worth. That's not just survival, that's victory.